Good evening, everyone. I promise you this is going to be a very fascinating session. But before I get to our speakers, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. How many of you all have seen the Terminator series, the movie? The cyborg assassin who turns a good guy. Only about 25%? Okay, how many saw iRobot? iRobot. Again, not too many. Where the robots kill their inventor and threaten to take over the world till Will Smith comes around and finds a robot that has some conscience and saves the world. Okay, a more direct question. How many of you all think that your jobs will be replaced by machines in about 5 years' time, 10 years' time? Only one, two, okay. And one of the biggest scientists or inventors, Elon Musk, thinks that the jobless future is very much on us. And he's the one that's inventing a lot of things. But just to explain very simply what this very complex subject is, artificial intelligence versus intelligence augmentation. The machine brain versus the human brain. And it's come to all of our homes if you've not noticed. My son, in fact, just picked up Alexa. And it tells him, whenever he wants to do anything, he says, put off the light, Alexa, and the lights go off in his room. He wants the music or the song that he wants, and he says, I want this song, and Alexa puts it on for him. And it also wakes him up around noon because that's when he actually rises. He's a late sleeper. And so that's artificial intelligence, just to put it very simply, programmed to do tasks for you. What's intelligence augmentation? I was in Paris to interview the President Macron, and I just got back. And on my way to the airport, I had taken a cab, and the cab suddenly screeched to a halt. I was thrown forward, and I asked the driver why. And he said, no, my car sensed that there was going to be a collision, and it automatically prevented that collision. And I'm sorry, I had no control over it. And that's intelligence augmentation in some senses, assisting a human in very important tasks. So the battle is on, machine brain versus human brains. Who will win that battle? And fortunately for us, we have two of the brightest brains to not only discuss the subject, but give us some solutions on this. I have Kris Gopalakrishnan, Executive Chairman of the legendary Infosys, one of its 7 founding members. Let's give him a very warm welcome. And of course, Dr. Murali Doraiswamy. He's a leading doctor and brain scientist at Duke University, and he's also a member of the World Economic Forum's Global Future Council that actually predicts where all this will end up in. So without further ado, I'm going to request Kris to begin, give a brief opening remark, followed by Murali Doraiswamy, and then we'll have a discussion. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Raj, and good afternoon, everyone. First, humans have invented tools from time immemorial. Fire, agriculture, the whole mechanical revolution which created factories. I was part of the IT revolution, the computers, introduction of digital computers. And now of course, I look at AI as a new tool, and I will explain why I think so. In that sense, humans have always leveraged tools to augment their capabilities. When we want to go from place A to place B, we can walk, we can run, we can hop on a car, we can fly. All of those are from going from a place A to place B. And so we have actually figured out how to do it faster and carry more people, so better, etc. When you look at digital computers were introduced as tools for arithmetic computing. And today, the phone which you have can do billion calculations per second. One form of intelligence, arithmetic capability. And it's doing far better than humans. And these tools that we have invented have far exceeded human capability over time. Whenever these tools were invented, also, if it is disruptive and if it impacts every human being, there have been transformations in society. So mechanized agriculture changed the face of agriculture. Factories changed the way artisans created products, and mass production came into being. When it came to digital computers, typists disappeared. Typewriters disappeared. So jobs have actually disappeared over time. And now I come to AI. See, to me, the first wave of computing is about telling the computer in a specific way and as a recipe what needs to be done. So how does the computer solve the problem? You first understand the problem, you create an algorithm, you program that algorithm, you feed it into the computer, and the computer executes those instructions precisely. That's the first wave of computing. The current wave of computing is you teach the computer how to find the right solution. So you teach the computer by showing what are the correct answers that you're looking for, and the computer then figures out. Actually, if you think about it, programming is not any more necessary in order to find the solution, because you're teaching the computer how to solve the problem. And that's a paradigm shift. So in the previous digital computer era, we couldn't actually get a computer to recognize a face. Now, the computer is able to recognize the face, and to maybe 97% accuracy. 97% accuracy. But of course, it depends on the sample size and how you teach the computer. If you teach the computer with only men subjects, it will only recognize faces of men. Right? And that's the capability that we have created. And so we are able to now use this system for a new set of problems which hitherto we couldn't actually solve using computers. And that's why it's exciting. That is why it's going to transform industries, transform our lives. And the applications are everywhere. From Siri, Alexa. And the joke is Alexa for the last 2 days has been laughing. Right? So things can go bad also. And that's where the fear comes, right? Something we don't understand fully how it works, we are unleashing on people. And then what are the consequences? What are the consequences if it does not recognize people or recognizes wrongly, etc. The last thing I wanted to say in this round is, I was part of the digital revolution in the first round, and we have benefited hugely from this. We have created 4 million jobs, $150 billion in revenue, a world-class industry. 5 of the top 10 IT services companies are from India today. Everybody in the world today comes to India for IT services and software development, really. So we have actually taken full advantage and benefited fully. And hence, I believe that in this wave, driven by artificial intelligence, which is a paradigm shift in computing, we have to be there from the beginning, because we cannot afford to miss this revolution. It is transformative. It will change everything that we know about. I believe it's something that we have to learn how to use effectively, efficiently, and to do the task that we want it to do. As long as we are able to do that, there's nothing to fear. Fire, for example, can destroy things. What is the latest tool for terrorists? It's a car or a truck. Now, do we ban cars and trucks because of that? We actually look at the rules and regulations and see how to use it more effectively such that it's not misused. So we have to prevent misuse with any new technology. That's what is needed.
Thanks, Kris. Hello. Yeah. Before we come to you, Murali, since you'd mentioned that you were part of this great digital revolution, the IT revolution that actually made India prosper in terms of economic growth, isn't it also shooting itself in the foot at the moment? Because artificial intelligence, big data, is now taking over the bodies that we had put together for IT industry, and you're seeing a degrowth in the industry. Isn't this, in some senses, a looming threat to you all?
Yes and no. See, as long as you stay relevant, as long as businesses stay relevant, because there are going to be significant opportunities to transform businesses, significant number of new problems to be solved. So, for example, can you now look at an image of a blood sample slide and then figure out what is wrong with the patient, where the sample came from, using...
No, I'm talking specifically of your industry, which
That's
is now
saying,
showing, even you all are pulling back on the numbers of people being hired. The IT industry is slowing down considerably, and everybody is saying it's the machines, it's artificial intelligence that's sourcing all that man used to do before.
See, so you have to stay relevant, that's what I'm saying. So for example, how do you teach a system? You have to curate the input data, you have to tell the system which are the correct samples, you have to fine-tune the weights of a AI machine learning system in order to actually make sure that it gives you the correct answer. So the way you design these systems, the way you work with these systems still requires human beings. Only thing is these human beings will require different set of skills. You're no more writing C code. So as long as you understand the change that is happening and you stay relevant, I think there is a future.
Okay.
And the reason why I don't feel bad at this point is from the beginning of the industry, we have seen multiple changes. I started with mainframe computers, COBOL, etc., with punch cards. We are now sitting with mobile computers and Internet of Things, and programming is done in Ruby on Rails and Python. We don't talk about C or Fortran, which again I learned. So as long as you stay relevant, there is a future for you, because this is a technology that is going to be transformative, which means that every industry needs to redo their systems.
Okay, we'll come back to that, and Murali, please make your opening remarks.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. So I think Kris made a very crucial statement. He said, as long as you stay relevant. So we are now in the fourth industrial revolution, which is essentially a cognitive revolution. So the biggest asset of a nation, the biggest asset of a company, is no longer the real estate, it's the cognitive power of its workforce, of its population. So Thomas Edison, who is one of the pioneers of an earlier industrial revolution, said something very funny but very insightful. He said the main purpose of the human body is to carry the brain around, right? So let's talk about artificial intelligence. How many people have heard the term singularity? Can you raise your hands? Okay. So singularity means it's the time in the future when the intelligence of a machine, when the intelligence of a computer rivals the intelligence of a human being. And this intelligence is not just for narrow tasks like Alexa ordering a pizza, but for broad general intelligence. It's called artificial general intelligence. Right now, machines are perhaps at the level of intelligence. How many people, by the way, know their IQs here? I don't see too many people. So, IQ is a range. So the average IQ of a population is around 100. That's how the scale was devised. So I'm assuming that, so Einstein is about 160. So I'm assuming most people in the audience are around 140, 150, because they're very highly educated, very accomplished people. Right now, some of the brightest machines that Kris pointed out can recognize pictures. They can actually recognize pictures better than a monkey. So a monkey's IQ is around 40 or 50, hypothetically. So a machine's IQ may be a little bit better. In a human scale, an IQ of 60 or 70 would be considered someone with mental retardation. The Chinese 2 years ago The Chinese, by the way, have invested very heavily in artificial intelligence. 2 years ago, they came up with the first artificial intelligence program that can beat a human on an IQ test. So on an average sample of people, so let's take 100 people, the machine was on average able to beat those people. That means the machine scored more than 100. So what is happening is something called intelligence explosion in machines. So machine intelligence is growing faster and faster and faster. Human intelligence, over the last 30, 40 years, our IQ has jumped only by about 30 points or so. And most of that is due to better nutrition, better childcare, reduction of poverty, things like that that have allowed our brains to develop. Over the next 30, 40 years, it's predicted that our IQ will go up only by 3 or 4 points. So what can we do to keep up with the machines that are growing so fast, that are becoming so intelligent? What if the machine develops an IQ of 6,000? What kind of jobs will there be left? The prediction is 800 million jobs will be lost, mostly in the lower level. So we need to retrain ourselves, and as a country, we need to invest in brain science. Because brain science will not only inform sort of our ability to cure neurologic and psychiatric disorders. So neurologic and psychiatric disorders are the leading cause of disability, and they're the biggest threat to the cognitive economy. Brain science will not only help us address those diseases, but will also help us develop better AI algorithms that can then assist us as human beings and better sort of allow us to control the AI and build the AI in a way that mimics the human brain, so that it's not sort of an autonomous AI that takes over from humans.
Murali, a quick question on this, and since you mentioned singularity, do you think, and since you also do research on brain science, do you think we will be able to replicate the brain function just as we did with the heart and just with, we're now trying to do with limbs? Do you think this is possible in the near future?
So we have to ask ourselves, do we want to replicate the brain or not? So let's take an airplane, right? There are two ways of designing an airplane. You can design an airplane so that it mimics a bird and flaps its wings. But none of the current airplanes flap their birds. So we have been able to design an airplane that gets us incredibly fast from places without necessarily flapping its wings. So there will be singularity-type AIs that don't necessarily mimic the human brain. We don't know. There may be other ways. There are also very, very large, ambitious projects underway to try to recreate the human brain. And that's going to require 3 steps. We need to map the brain in great detail so that we understand all of its circuitry. And there's about a dozen large international projects underway. Kris has actually funded 3 chairs in computational neuroscience at IIT Madras to initiate a mapping project like that in India. After you map it, right, then you have to put it together, and then you have to simulate and run it. The prediction is in the next 45 to 50 years, we may achieve singularity.
Wow. That's close. But Kris, Murali had mentioned, unless you want to add to the point, he had mentioned that you were working, you've assisted a lot of projects on this neuroscience. Could you tell us some of the benefits of this advancement? We all look at it as a threat, but I'm sure there's a tremendous sort of, advantages that we could benefit from.
So before I do that, let me give you my perspective on computers becoming smarter and smarter. They are going to become smarter and smarter. As Murali said, in a narrow way, they're already in several dimensions far superior to humans. Now, I talked about numerical computations. I don't know anybody who can do billion calculations in a second. Machines already can do that. Machines are now becoming much better at automatic translation of speech. Again, very few individuals can do that actually. So in narrow dimensions, actually machines are becoming far superior because we are throwing sheer computing at the problem. And as the power of the computer increases exponentially, which is still doing, they will become far superior in certain dimensions. And this is not new. I don't think anybody can go from India to the US using our own legs or swimming or something like that. But we are able to do that. Hundreds of millions of people are flying today. Right? So we will be able to do much better than machines will be able to do much better than humans in the future. Now, will we create one machine which will mimic then all the things that humans do, probably that's quite far away, and that's because the human body is very complex and the brain is very complex. Now, why am I investing in this? Because I saw the benefit of us being part of the digital revolution, creating an industry here, which I mentioned, which is today 6-7% of GDP, 25% of our exports, 4 million jobs, and $150 billion in revenue. As we go through the next wave of change, we need to be part of that change. There is also an issue of epidemic of huge proportions, mental disorder Murali talked about. One of the mental disorders that I'm supporting in analyzing is aging, and aging-related disorders like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia. We will have 200 million people above the age of 65 in the next probably 15, 20 years. And that's going to be a significant part of our population. And 1 in 4, 1 in 5 will develop some mental disorder. Whenever I talk to my friends, every single one of them has experienced somebody in their family, older, parents-in-law, uncle, aunt, etc., who is actually afflicted with some kind of aging-related disorder, dementia, etc. And the cost is huge. And the cost in a poor country like India is significantly more because their family ends up supporting those people. So it's just not the human cost and the economic cost, but the social cost and things like that is huge. If India becomes part of the solution, hopefully the problem gets solved faster because we can put more people. Hopefully the problem gets solved cheaper than India can afford it. And we will bring perspectives which are required. Diversity of thought is required in research. Because of our culture, we will bring perspectives which probably gives us a solution faster. And last but not least, if 1.3 billion people's gene pool is not represented in the research that's being done, 1/6 of the human population is missing in the research. We just cannot afford, because the genetic makeup of Indian population is very different from the genetic makeup of the rest of the world. And more we are realizing that medicine is very personal. What works for me may not work for you. What works for you may not work for me. But we simply take the medicine without understanding whether it will work for us or not. So there are many, many reasons why we in India should be part of the research effort.
Now, you had mentioned the progress that you've made in terms of calculations, in terms of the speed of things. One of the things, Murali, is can machines actually replicate emotions? Take those decisions that are there. Machines are great if you program them to, say, drive a car, which is what's happened now. But beyond that, take the decisions. How do you, will that happen soon?
Yeah, I think so. It's just a complexity of programming that's one level higher. It's not there yet. So many of you have attended international conferences, have probably already seen robots with amazingly human-like emotions. In fact, they've done a study. There is one robot that has such amazing human-like expressions that it elicits firing of the mirror neurons in humans who actually watch that robot, suggesting that the human is not able to tell the difference at the brain level between a robotic emotions and a human emotion. So ultimately, I think robots will develop the emotions based on the person who's programming it. Right now, they don't. And another very interesting experiment, robots you would think probably are not good at jobs like nursing or as a psychiatrist, jobs that require very in-depth person-to-person interactions. A study has actually done a clinical trial comparing robot-administered cognitive behavior therapy versus a living human psychiatrist-administered cognitive behavior therapy, found almost equivalent results in terms of treatment of depression, suggesting that in the future, maybe you'll have a robotic psychiatrist, to talk to anytime you want, maybe through your Alexa, at home.
What about love? Can they fall in love?
I'll turn that over to Kris. He's the...
No, I just want to say this actually. What does emotions bring? Unpredictability. And we already are experiencing unpredictability. Alexa is laughing at you.
Sorry?
Alexa is laughing at you.
Laughing, that's right, that hysterical laugh.
It's unpredictable already.
No, so coming back to this point that you were making, we've talked about the cyber war. Are we now heading to a neuro war where machines are going to be battling us or machines are battling machines, just like the sci-fi movie that I talked about when we started, Terminator, iRobot? I mean, this was a future we thought was in a distant reality, and now it looks like all this is happening from what you're saying.
The short answer to your question is yes.
That's not
because
comforting
no
at all.
country wants to send human beings to suffer casualties. So we're going to have virtual wars increasingly, I think. And these are going to be wars that are largely neuroscience driven. So countries have already showcased at various defense conferences a brain-controlled drone that's directly controlled by the brain. There are exoskeletons like Iron Man that are directly wired to the soldier's brain. And Elon Musk has launched a company called Neuralink, which is aiming to directly connect your brain to the internet, not just through a phone. You just think, and then it's connected directly to Google without using any external device by perhaps implanting a wire mesh. And in animal experiments in mouse models, they have shown in the developing mouse, you can actually implant a flexible electronic material on the mouse's brain, and the mouse's brain grows and develops with this electronic material so that they are all interlinked with each other. So it's almost like if you implant a internet-related wires into the brain at a very young age, the brain develops and grows with it. You know, hopefully, I'm not sure if that's going to be done in humans, but that's the sign of where we are headed.
No, Kris, I know you want to, but I want to get to this ethical question. We talked of Alexa. Here is a device that we think innocently is only doing the task we're doing, but is actually almost like a microphone recording whatever you're doing, you're saying. It's in your house, in your bedroom. How serious is this invasion to privacy? Do we then, if you have a state that really has control of a lot of these inputs that are coming in, and now Amazon, Google, all of them have the kind of information that none of us, might have of our children, as for instance, or our wives, or whatever it is. How is this going to damage us in that sense? How do we protect our privacy? Are we leaving it too much to the scientists to determine what these rules should be, or should the state be stepping in?
So this is a question which I think we need to discuss, debate, and probably find answers over time. We don't have answers today. You know, we are seeing elections being influenced by social media, and those people who can manipulate social media will control the elections and people's minds and opinions and things like that. It's already happening. As you rightly said, today, our smartphone knows more about ourselves than we do, because it knows everything about us, actually. Whom do we speak, whom do we talk to, who our friends are, when I'm awake, when do I eat, how many steps I take, everything it knows, actually. It knows my calendar, it knows everything about me.
So what should we be doing?
So
should we regulate it or not?
Regulation is one way, but society also creates cultural norms over time, because everything cannot be regulated. So this technology has come in our midst too fast. See, what we forget is that we have lived through this. The browser was introduced in 1993. That's when internet really took off. iPhone was introduced in 2007, 10 years back, which really, the smartphone revolution happened. All the social media things came. Facebook was also 1997 or 1996. The social media revolution started 20 years back. So this has happened so fast, and we still have not understood the power of this technology. And we're discovering the power of this technology. So I strongly believe that we must assume that privacy is gone.
Privacy is gone.
Period. Okay?
Are you all okay with that? Privacy is gone.
And assume that everything that we do, everything that we say, will be public. Somebody will disclose it. Somebody will hack into it. And be careful. Assume that you are in the public eye. Cameras are all over the place. People are listening to you. It's, casual conversation.
Where do you stand on this ethical divide of
Well, I think we need some guidelines for privacy, especially for children, because a lot of toys are coming embedded with artificial intelligence and recording information, so that's very important. But I agree with Kris. But more interesting than that is the word privacy itself may become a moot point, because with AI, the AI might actually predict what you're going to do tomorrow. And if the AI already knows what you're going to do tomorrow, where's the question of privacy? So your smartphone, using your smartphone, we can predict with 80% accuracy what you're going to do tomorrow. Because our patterns are so, feed the phone enough data based on like 1 year's pattern of your habits. So the privacy is going to be completely redefined, I think, as we go forward.
Aren't we hurtling to our doom in some senses? Why should we be trying to replicate the brain? For what purpose? If finally machines can be as intelligent as us, as emotive as us, where are we headed to?
So there are many benefits of AI, obviously. So enormous benefits, right? So for starting, they're faster, they're more efficient. The whole word, human error, like, do you want a neurosurgeon who has tremors, or do you want a robot with no tremors operating on very small areas of your brain? Studies have shown, in fact, the IEEE, which is an engineering trade group in the US, has been running a competition, AI versus doctors, across like multiple diseases. About 8 or 9 years ago, the doctors were winning. Now in about 40% of the diseases, the doctors are losing. So better diagnosis of pneumonia, better diagnosis of some types of heart attacks, very fine microsurgery. There are AI programs. There's an AI knife called an eye knife that can not only cut the tumor, but while it's cutting the tumor, it automatically analyzes the pathology of the region to see if it's normal or if it's diseased. No doctor can do that. And at the same time, it's scanning 5,000 articles on the topic to try to figure out what's the next step and where it should go. So all of those, these are just some examples. Of course, it'll free up time for humans. It'll free up capital. It's probably cheaper in some cases. The downside, of course, is the enormous loss of jobs. So we need to find some way to maybe either a universal income, as many people have suggested, or a tax on AI. I'm sure Kris doesn't like that word. And the last is, we don't want AI making us their slaves. So we need to find a way to box AI and control it.
Yeah, so clearly we have to figure out, in the past we have figured out. We have seen these transitions happening in the past, as I said, agricultural revolution, industrial revolution. There have been massive transformations of jobs. Now the challenge for India is we are living in multiple worlds simultaneously. We have people still dependent on agriculture, 50% of the population. We are still people who are not literate enough to actually be part of the services industry. So they have to be in the manufacturing industry. And then we have people in the services industry, and we have at the other end professionals working in, as doctors, as physicians, as IT professionals, etc. So we span actually all these worlds and trying to figure out how something that is going to have such massive impact can be addressed. And that's all the more reason, I believe, that we have to get involved, we have to do research in these areas, we have to figure out what are the future scenarios, where can we employ these people, how can we employ, and it will also mean educating, because we have for the future jobs. Okay. And then what are the societal constructs that we need, like universal basic income, that allows us to make sure that when we do this transition, we don't actually implode. Because that's very much an issue.
We've got 5 minutes, and I just want someone here with a question, just 2 questions I can take. I see right behind, he raised his hand, yeah, first. And Kali, 2, okay.
Let me begin by thanking the India Today for bringing Murali and Kris together. Okay, so I'm a physician. My question is that, sir, AI, is it a boon or bane for poor countries like India? One school of thought is that so many jobs could be lost. The other school is that people like you could produce so many robotic, software, so that India really became a software superpower. What might happen in the future, Kris? Yeah.
We didn't get it. You're worried about the jobs?
Yeah. Yes. What is it good or bad for India, our poor countries?
How? What will be the impact of AI on India? And
So, if we do not get involved, it's a sure way that we are going to lose out. So it's better for us to get involved, understand the implications, but it requires us to actually plan. It requires us to react. If we don't do that, so we know what could happen, and if we don't react to that, if we don't find solutions, then it's no excuse for us.
So in the UAE, they just appointed the first minister for artificial intelligence. So we perhaps need a government-level, national sort of framework for how we're going to deal with artificial intelligence, to preserve jobs, to revamp our educational curriculum, etc.
Kali?
So this question is to both of you. You said that emotions lead to unpredictability. And then Murali said that if your life is predictable, effectively AI can predict what you're going to do next, right? So in that, putting the two together, if you're more unpredictable, then do you have a more private life? And then can AI not predict you? And in that way, is it better to be a woman and be super emotional so you can be totally unpredictable?
We can never predict a woman. Anyway, but is it better to be unpredictable then, since the machine seems to be knowing? And I think she implied the woman does all those things. Am I right, Kali? Go ahead.
Is it better in what ways? The question is, are you saying better so that the AI is not able to beat you in terms of...
Yes, and in the sense that we're more human, because you're saying being predictable is something that AI can replicate. Being unpredictable and emotional is something that machines can't. Yeah. And I think our ultimate purpose should be that at least we're human.
Absolutely.
We're not machines.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'll answer it in a slightly different way. The kind of jobs that AI will never replace, at least in the next 30, 40 years, are jobs that require a lot of empathy, jobs that require a lot of non-cognitive skills, creativity, artistry, painting.
Fashion, what we saw just before this session.
Well, fashion, no, Amazon has just created an AI program, and they're just tinkering with it. But
where's Sabyasachi? Your job is gone. Is he here in the audience?
Ultimately, yes, I agree with you that many of those skills are, I think, skills that are still very far away for the machine to learn.
See, I believe the best way to predict the future is create that future. Be part of creating that future. That's precisely why we have to be on top of this phase of the evolution of technology.
And not, as you said, on the ground.
Not follow us, not let somebody else decide our future.
And I just want to make one point. We touched upon this, but neurological and mental illnesses are one of the biggest threats to the cognitive capacity of this country. One particular, depression, it's highly prevalent, especially amongst the youth, and the youth are going to be the future leaders of this country. There's something like, 350 suicides a day. So it's, I think, very important. It's been great that India has had an awakening in this regard, and there are many, many foundations doing work in this area. For example, Deepika Padukone's foundation, Live, Love, Laugh, has done enormous work in this area. So I think it's very important that we not lose track of that, because that's going to be crucial.
Can we take one more question, Kali? Are we okay? Just one question, yeah. Last question.
My name is Kaustubh Dawse. I represent the government of Maharashtra. I just have a very quick comment and a question. About a month ago, we inaugurated the first Institute of Artificial Intelligence in our state. It's basically a joint venture between the Wadhwani brothers and government of Maharashtra. So as far as it's a joint venture between the Wadhwani brothers and government of Maharashtra. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, we want to know what's your question.
Yeah, the question is essentially that the government has put a strategy in place in order to address this very important need, because there were a lot of comments about, government kind of, have they caught up, or is there a policy, is there a strategy? I think the Honorable Prime Minister and the Honorable Chief Minister of the state is already on record that they're supporting this. My quick question is that you categorically mentioned about, some kind of a framework that government should put in place. We have decided that the framework should be around AI for social good. Now, your take essentially on some of the steps that government should take in order to have positive proliferation of AI tech across the board.
very quickly, one, education. So, for example, when the digital revolution started, we introduced programming in every college course. We should introduce AI and machine learning as a required course, whether you're doing history, philosophy, English literature, as well as in every facets of science and engineering, because this is something people need to now understand and learn. Second, we need to create think tanks which will actually think about the issues and what are possible solutions. We need to enable our research ecosystem to look at solutions where we'll address the challenges that are facing India, and we bring in the Indian perspective and the Indian thought into this. So we have to increase the quality and the quantity of research that's happening. Entrepreneurship, because many of these are going to be introduced into the market through new business creation. Entrepreneurs bring in disruptive innovations. The existing companies primarily, these are generalizations, look at incremental innovation. So we need to create an ecosystem of robust startup creation using the research and the technology that's being created in these areas. Those are the things. And the policy regarding privacy, regarding use of data. Data is going to be the biggest driver for AI. So we have to have a national policy on data. It's important that we understand the power.
That's a good point. A national policy on data.
We have today. 1.3 billion people. The data of that people, we should be able to monetize and leverage that.
That's a very good point. And we're going to end this session with the usual micro moment that we ask our speakers to do. And I'm going to ask both of you this. If you had a famous personality that you would like to make a robot, which one would that be and why?
It's interesting. I would look at a child because then
a child.
Yeah, because in the first 3-4 years, the brain is being created. Knowledge is getting added. That's something we can learn, and then that's how we make a machine that can learn.
No, a famous personality. You don't want a famous person to name one. If you had the choice, who would you replicate?
Maybe Rabindranath Tagore.
Tagore, okay. And why?
Artistic person.
Sorry?
Artistic person, because their brains are different. So maybe that's what I would look at.
And you, Murali?
Tesla. He had so many inventions that have never come to fruition, so maybe the robot would take over.
And with that note, they might take over us as well. Tomorrow, maybe 5 years later, you might have 3 robots having the same discussion about humans. Okay, thank you very much for this discussion. Thank you. Please give them a very warm round of applause.